In this video, we will continue our previous discussion of Ibn Arabi's differentiation between attached imagination and detached imagination. We'll also take a look at how Ibn Arabi solves the issue of creation, that is, whether the cosmos is eternal or created in time. Please like and share this video if you think this video is interesting. You can also help me out monetarily, be it PayPal or Patreon. Your monetary support does mean the world to me. Thank you so much for supporting this channel monetarily.
Although both attached and detached imagination have creative power, they operate in very different ways. The process of imaginative creation is not the same at the divine level as it is at the human level. Also, the idea of detached imagination is not just a case of giving human traits to God. To understand how detached imagination works in creation, we need to look at Ibn Arabi's perspective on how the cosmos came into being. Referring to a prophetic saying that God created the cosmos through the breath of the All-Merciful, and the Quranic verse, "And our word unto a thing, when we desire it, is only to say to it, be, and it is," Ibn Arabi develops a detailed explanation of creation. He said that the whole cosmos was brought into being by the utterance of the original word, be, a word that happens together with the divine breath, anafas al-ilahi, or the breath of the All-Merciful, anafas ar-Rahmani, and with the appearance of the cosmos itself. Just like letters carry meaning when spoken, the forms in the cosmos receive spirit from the breath of the All-Merciful. Ibn Arabi sees the creation of the whole cosmos as the same thing as the self-manifestation of al-Haq, Tajalli. According to him, this Tajalli happens in two main stages. The first is called the essential self-manifestation, Tajalli Dati, or the most holy emanation, where God reveals himself inwardly as the permanent entities. The second stage is the sensory self-manifestation, Tajalli Shuhudi, or the holy emanation, where God appears outwardly as distinct external forms. The first stage happens entirely within God's own being. It is an internal process that does not involve any separation or sense of otherness from God's essence. In this stage, the permanent entities are basically the names and attributes of God.
The second stage, where otherness appears, happens when God breathes out the divine breath, described as a dense, clear, luminous mist called the All-Merciful Vapor.
This divine breath is what makes the divine names visible and active in the external world. It takes them from being just possibilities to becoming actual things in existence. In other words, it is the underlying substance of the entire world, containing all the hidden forms that might come into being. Ibn Arabi sums it up by saying, quote, "Everything is contained in the divine breath, like the whole day is contained in the light of dawn. Whoever wants to understand the divine breath should reflect on the cosmos." The cosmos brings into actual form the possibilities that were already present in the divine breath, just like how everything that happens during the day is already hinted at in the light of dawn. The divine breath is the same as what Ibn Arabi calls the prime matter, al-Jawhar al-Hayulani, which holds all the potential forms of the cosmos. It is the foundational substance behind all divine creations. To understand this better, we can think of the breath-like ink that contains all the words that can be written, or like a blank white page that holds all possible drawings. The breath holds all potential forms in a unified, undivided state. Since creation happens through the divine word be and the exhalation of the divine breath, what role does imagination play? Ibn Arabi says that breathing and imagining are essentially the same thing because it is through breathing that God made all forms appear. He also says that the world of absolute imagination, al-khayal al-mutlaq, is the same as the primordial breath. In fact, he links the primordial breath with the so-called primordial cloud, Ama. There is a well-known saying where the Prophet Muhammad was asked, "Where was our Lord before he created his creatures?" He answered, "In a cloud, Ama, there was no space above or below." Ibn Arabi interprets this cloud as the very first form the divine breath took. Inside this cloud, God began to shape and separate all the forms that make up the world. So, the primordial cloud is the first real something that shows the divine starting to manifest. It is where everything that exists moved from pure potential into actual form, from being formless to being formal. Quote, "Know then that the true nature of absolute imagination is what is referred to as the cloud, the initial state that makes God's outward manifestation possible."
The cloud represents divine imagination because it doesn't just passively hold all form, it also actively shapes them. In other words, it is both a container and a creator. Through the cloud, God brings the essences of all possible beings into visible, imaginable forms. It is the tool through which divine realities become the actual world.
By identifying absolute imagination with the cloud and connecting the divine act of imagining with the act of breathing, Ibn Arabi argues that divine imagination works differently from human imagination. For humans, imagination happens internally. But for God, imagining is an outward act. It is the same as creating. So, when God imagines something, it instantly comes into existence. There is not some eternal blueprint or pre-existing mental model in God's mind. Before existing in the cloud, the forms of the cosmos didn't exist as images or ideas in God's mind. He didn't imagine them beforehand. They were not imagined forms, but they were known. Hence, creation is not like a slow, growing light that brings hidden forms within God into visibility, implying that the forms were somehow already present within God, just not yet clear. Ibn Arabi insists that while all potential beings were always known to God as permanent entities, they were not imagined. God's knowledge of them is not the same as imagining them. So, in Ibn Arabi's view, the eternal model of the whole cosmos is found in God's knowledge, not in his imagination. When God breathes out the world, that act of breathing is the same as imagining the world into existence. That's why Ibn Arabi identifies the divine breath with absolute imagination. And this is where he makes an important distinction. For God, knowing and imagining are two very different things. Quote, "There are two kinds of people who think about things, and two kinds of things they think about. Some people have both knowledge and imagination. Others have knowledge but no imagination. As for the things being thought about, some have form, so they can be understood by both types of people, but only imagined by the one who has imagination. Other things have no form at all. They can only be understood, not imagined. Knowing something does not mean picturing it in our mind, and it does not mean turning its meaning into a shape or image. That is because not everything we know can take a form, and not everyone is able to imagine forms. Whether someone can imagine a form depends on their own imaginative ability, and whether something has a form depends on whether it can actually be imagined. Since there are things that we can know but cannot imagine, it is clear that those things simply have no form. The point is that just because we know something, it doesn't mean we can picture it. And not everything that we know can even have a picture or form. Some things, like trees or people, have forms. Other things, like justice or the number 0, don't, and they can only be understood, not imagined.
Ibn Arabi makes a clear distinction between knowing and imagining. He also distinguishes between form, surah, and meaning, makna. Forms are the physical representations of formless meanings, and because of this, they can be imagined.
He says that the cosmic forms are the things that can be imagined, and the cloud, where these forms exist, is where imagination happens. For Ibn Arabi, forms are not permanent, ideal models that things are made after. Instead, forms are the actual things themselves. So, just as there are spiritual forms, there are also physical, sensory forms, and subtle, intellectual forms. These all make up the cosmic forms that represent the formless, permanent entities. This means that in his view, cosmic and formal are the same thing. On the other hand, meaning can be understood by the intellect and doesn't require imagination. The main meanings are the permanent entities. The forms Ibn Arabi talks about, which exist in the cloud or absolute imagination, are different from the permanent entities because these entities have not smelt the fragrance of existence. They are still in God's self. This distinction fits with Ibn Arabi's belief that knowledge is not the form of something being imagined by the knower. He supports this with the Quranic verse, the originator, Badi, of the heavens and the earth. This term, Badi, comes from the word ibda, which means creating something new without any prior model. Ibn Arabi explains that the creation of the heavens and earth is linked to this divine aim because they were created with no pre-existing model or form. If the form of the cosmos were the same as the permanent entities in non-existence, God wouldn't be called Badi because he would have been creating from a pre-existing form in his knowledge, which would contradict the idea of creatio ex nihilo. Quote, God is called the originator of the heavens and the earth because he created them without following any previous model. The first thing God created was the intellect, or the supernal pen, al-kalam, which was the first thing to come from God's most transcendent nature. Every creation that is made without a pre-existing model is considered original, mubda, and God, as the creator, is called the originator, mubdi. If knowledge means conceiving the form of something known, as some people define it, then that creature wouldn't be original, because it would have a model already in the creator's mind, according to which it was created. To believe that knowledge is just imagining the form of something means that what exists in God's self has always been necessary and eternal, and that God didn't create it from nothing, like an innovator would. It would also mean that everything is created according to a pre-existing form in God's self, but God's self is not the place where he creates things. Therefore, if we follow this idea, it would mean God is not truly originator, but he is. God doesn't have a form of what he creates within himself, nor does he conceive of the form before creating it. This is a complicated issue. Among the things that can be known, some can be given a form and others cannot, even though they can still be known. This shows that the definition of knowledge as conceiving the form of the known is not accurate. Similarly, a person who knows might be someone who can imagine forms, or they might be someone who knows without being able to form an image, unable to give form. For God, giving form is something that happens from the outside, from without. And he doesn't take in what he creates into his own self. He only knows it. It's important to understand that origination can only happen with forms because they can be created and made new. Meanings, on the other hand, cannot be created or originated because they don't have a form. They can only be understood intellectually, and they are permanent and unchanging. Ibn Arabi explores this idea more deeply by interpreting the Quranic verse, "All things perish, save his face." He uses this verse to talk about the nature of the cosmic forms that appear in the primordial cloud, al-Amma. He points out that in Arabic, The word his face, wajhahu, can be interpreted in two ways. First, it might refer to God, as is usually understood, meaning everything perishes except God's face. Second, it could also refer to the thing itself, meaning everything perishes except the face of the thing. A similar thing happens in the well-known prophetic saying, God created man in his image, suratihi. Here too, the word his could refer either to God or to man. So it might also be read as God created man in man's own image.
Ibn Arabi uses this alternative reading to explain something important. Everything that exists has both a form and a reality or essence. The form is the part that perishes, the outer appearance. The face, on the other hand, refers to the imperishable inner reality, the true essence of a thing.
So in his view, the forms in the cloud are temporary and fading, but the realities behind them, their faces, never perish. Quote, Then he caused to exist in the cloud all the forms of the world, about which he says the world perishes, that is, in respect of its forms, but its face, that is to say, but in respect of its reality it does not perish. For the pronoun hoin waj refers to the thing. So in relation to the forms of the world, everything perishes, but in relation to its realities, the world is not perishable, nor is it possible to be so. For if the form of man perishes, for example, and there remains no trace of it in existence, its reality, which is identified by and is identical with man's definition, would not perish. We say that man is a rational animal, hayawan natik, and we do not refer to his being existent or non-existent, because this reality has never ceased to be his, even if there were for him no form in existence. Even though it may sound strange at first, Ibn Arabi's belief is a key part of his philosophy because it helps solve a long-standing puzzle about creation. How can the whole cosmos be both eternal, without beginning or qidam, and also created, having a beginning, or huduth? According to Islamic belief, the whole cosmos was created out of nothing and will eventually come to an end. But this creates a problem for philosophers. If the cosmos began to exist, that would mean something changed in God who, being eternal and unchanging, should not experience any kind of change. The same problem arises when we talk about the end of the world. Because of this, many early Muslim philosophers said the cosmos must have always existed alongside God, so that God's eternal nature stays untouched. But this idea creates another issue. If the cosmos is eternal, how can it have been created from nothing, as Islamic teachings require?
This paradox, how the whole cosmos can be eternal and created at the same time, becomes the major question in Islamic thought.
Ibn Arabi, however, offers a new way to reconcile the paradox using his concept of imagination. He explains that the cosmos exists eternally in God's knowledge as permanent entities, but is also created from nothing, creatio ex nihilo, when it appears in reality. This allowed him to affirm both Islamic belief and philosophical logic at the same time. Quote, Praise be to God who brought the cosmos into existence from non-existence and the non-existence of non-existence. The first non-existence means the cosmos was created from nothing. It had a beginning, newness. The second part, non-existence of non-existence, is a double negative, which implies existence, meaning the cosmos also has a kind of eternal reality. Put simply, the cosmos is new because God created it from nothing. But the cosmos is also eternal because in God's knowledge, it always existed as a possibility. It captures Ibn Arabi's idea that the whole cosmos is both created in time and eternally present in divine knowledge.
Thank you so much for watching. My special thanks go to Shin Wong, who has been the highest patron on my Patreon page. Thank you very much for your awesome support.